If I had signed those new estate papers just 1 week later, my daughter-in-law might never have found out what she'd thrown away over a Tuesday afternoon of free babysitting. My name is Eleanor Voss. I'm 68 years old, a retired pediatric nurse from Millbrook, Ohio, and I spent 31 years working night shifts, so I'd know exactly which cries from a child meant something was wrong. That instinct never left me, even in retirement. I raised my son Michael, alone after his father died in a highway accident when Michael was 9. I worked doubles, skipped vacations, and put every spare dollar into a savings account, so he'd never feel the absence of a father as a lack of anything else. When he married Danielle 6 years ago, I welcomed her the way I would have welcomed a daughter. I helped pay for their wedding. I gave them the down payment for their first house. And when their son Caleb was born, I told them my door was always open. That open door became the problem. Danielle started dropping Caleb off too, sometimes 3 times a week, always with the same clipped explanation. "You're retired, Eleanor. You have nothing else going on." I never asked for money. I loved my grandson, but I did ask gently if she could give me a day's notice instead of an hour. She laughed it off. Then one Tuesday, I mentioned that my knees had been bothering me and I couldn't chase a toddler around all afternoon without help. Danielle set her purse down on my counter and said flatly, "It's not like you have anything better to do with your time, or your money, for that matter." Caleb was already halfway out of his coat before I could answer. I just nodded, took his hand, and said nothing. What Danielle didn't know was that 4 years earlier, after my sister passed, I had inherited a small but well-managed portfolio of rental properties and investments worth just over $2 million in money. I had quietly kept separate from Michael and Danielle's knowledge, meaning to surprise them one day with a generous share of it in my will. My attorney, Richard Palmer, was the only person who knew the full extent of it. I had never once mentioned it at family dinners. I wanted my time with Caleb and with Michael to be about love, not leverage. After that afternoon, though, something in me settled into a quiet decision. Instead of confronting Danielle, I called Richard the next morning and asked him to draft an updated version of my estate plan, and one that restructured the trust so that any inheritance meant for Michael's household would be held in a protective trust for Caleb's education alone, with Danielle named as neither trustee nor beneficiary. I didn't do this out of spite. I did it because I needed to know, with evidence rather than assumption, whether Danielle valued our family or simply valued what she thought our family could give her. Over the following month, I paid closer attention. I kept a simple log of the days she dropped Caleb off unannounced, the excuses she gave, the times she mentioned my free time like it was a resource to be spent. The truth came out on its own. Richard's office had accidentally CC'd Michael on a document transmission meant for me alone, and Michael, confused, brought it to Sunday dinner and asked me about it in front of Danielle. I saw no reason to hide it any longer. I told them calmly about my sister's inheritance, about the $2 million I had never spoken of, and about the trust I had just finalized for Caleb's future. Danielle's face went white, then red. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "You have $2 million and you let me think," she started, then stopped herself, because she understood exactly what she'd let herself say in my kitchen a month before. "I'm not writing you out of anything you were ever entitled to," I told her quietly. "I'm making sure Caleb gets what love should have already given him for free." The fallout wasn't loud, but it was real. Michael, humiliated and hurt, insisted Danielle apologize. And for weeks, the tension in their marriage was plain even from the outside. Danielle lost the casual assumption that my time, my help, and eventually my money were simply hers to expect. She stopped dropping Caleb off unannounced. She stopped commenting on how I spent my days. For the first time in years, she asked me if Tuesday would work before showing up. It took nearly a year, but Danielle did come to me eventually, on her own, without Michael prompting her. She sat at my kitchen table, the same one where she'd once told me I had nothing better to do. And she apologized, really apologized, not for getting caught, but for how she'd treated the person who'd shown up for her son without ever asking for anything in return. I didn't restore the trust to what it was before. Some things, once restructured, are better left as a lesson rather than reversed as a reward. But I did let her back into my afternoons, my dinners, my life, because forgiveness and financial boundaries can exist in the same house. without canceling each other out. I think about my old nursing shifts sometimes, how you learn to tell the difference between a child who's simply tired and one who's actually hurting. It taught me patience, but it also taught me this. You don't have to raise your voice to set a boundary, and you don't have to announce your worth for it to protect you when it matters. Quiet strength holds its shape long after the moment has passed. If someone in your life treats your time as worthless, don't waste your breath convincing them. Otherwise, just make sure your actions do the convincing instead.